All right, guys, welcome to my 2019 American League season preview. This is not going to be something that is super in depth, but it will have a little bit of talk about the teams, where they finished from 2018, what to expect in 2019, and then we'll go from there. So I don't want this to take 3 hours to talk about. So we'll talk about some of the teams, and then we'll kind of mix it all up and see what happens here at the end. So we're going to start with where they ended last year, and the Boston Red Sox won the 2018 American League. They won the pennant, and then they went on and they beat the Los Angeles Dodgers in the World Series. They ended up winning 108 games last year, and they were classified as a super team. The American League has three super teams. They have the Boston Red Sox, the New York Yankees, and the Houston Astros. And all three of those teams hit the 100-win plateau, with the Red Sox winning 108, the Astros winning 103, and the Yankees won 100 even. The interesting thing about the American League is that they also have some of the worst teams in baseball. They have I think there's 5 teams that lost 95 games or more, and there's 3 of them that lost 100 games. With the Baltimore Orioles being the worst, they lost 115 games, only won 47 last season. That's pretty hard to do, is only win 47 games when you play 162. There's 3 teams that are super teams, 5 teams that are really kind of in the bottom end, and that's covers 8 of the teams that are in the division. The Tampa Bay Rays had an outstanding season. They won 90 games a year ago, missed the playoffs. Generally speaking, when you win 90 games, you're going to make the playoffs. But that's because the Oakland A's did the same thing. But they even better. They won 97 games. You've got some of these intermixed teams. And that's what I call them, intermixed teams, because you don't know what's going to happen. You got the Oakland A's. You've got the Tampa Rays in that kind of mix. You've got the Los Angeles Angels, the Minnesota Twins. Those teams are kind of in there too. But if you really break this down, not to disappoint anybody or kind of make this a show that is over before it starts, but you still have the 3 super teams for 2019. You have the Red Sox, the Yankees, and the Astros. And if you look at the Central, you're going to end up with the Indians and the Twins battling it out there. And then if you look at the West, you're going to have the Astros win the West. And then it's a matter of really who's going to play for the last wild card. So, going into the season, you can already kind of pick and choose what's going to happen here. And you've got 3 teams. You've got the Rays, the Twins, and the Angels, and possibly the Oakland A's, who are going to fight for that last wild card spot. So let's break this down a little differently so that we can talk about the strengths of these teams and kind of where they rank in 2019 versus where they rated in 2018. And the one thing that we have to do is basically take a sabermetric view of these teams and where they ended in 2018. So the first thing we do is we don't look at what actually happened. We look at what should have happened, and there is a way to do that. And ideally, what you're looking at is a what's called an adjusted standings report. And in the adjusted standings report, ideally what happens is they take what's called the Pythagorean theorem, and that is a team scores X number of runs, they should have X number of wins. That's really all it is. And then there is some caveats to that, where they look at it from a perspective of, okay, let's look at what they should have done based on their runs, and then let's look at who do they face, because not everybody faces the same strength of schedule. And then lastly, they look at it based off of who the pitchers they faced were. So they come up with this thing, and it's called the adjusted hit list factor. And the adjusted hit list factor basically combines all three of those together and then rounds it out to say this is what should have happened in terms of the number of wins that a team should have had. And in this case, we find some interesting feedback. The first thing is that the Houston Astros, who won 103 games last year, they should have won 108 games. That would have made them the number one seed and the number one team in the American League. The Boston Red Sox, who won 108 games, should have won 103, and the Yankees, who won 100 games, should have won 100 games. So nothing changed in retrospect to who won the divisions and if there was supposed to be a different wild card team and that kind of stuff. Nothing changed in that retrospect. But what did change was that the Boston Red Sox were not really the best team in the American League East, in the American League, even though they won the pennant, and that happens a lot. I mean, that's a normal thing. But we need to take those data points and look at it for 2019, and that's where things really come into play that I think is kind of interesting. The first thing is I'm a big proponent that when you are off of a season where a lot of your star players had their best years or they've had career years, then I think that you're looking for a downfall for the next year, because typically your players are not going to live up to a career season back to back. They're not going to build upon that. They're actually going to fall back, because if they've had their career best season, then obviously that's the best they've ever produced before. There's no way to predict that they're going to do that again. And we have the Boston Red Sox in that spot. So a lot of their star players, almost all of the position players, had their best years, had their career years. So you would expect them not to be in that same mold this season. And then you look at the vice versa of that, and you look at the teams that had players that did not live up to what their normal season would be. And you have the Houston Astros still in that spot. The Houston Astros on offense were not as good as they were a year ago. Carlos Correa and Jose Altuve were not the MVP kind of players that they had been in the past, that they've missed some time because of injury. They won because of their pitching. They were one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. And the New York Yankees similarly did not get performance out of Judge. I mean, he played very well when he played, but he missed a lot of games. And then Sanchez, the catcher, was very dismal. So they had a lot of players that were not living up to their potential of what they should be doing. So those two teams are more on a rise for 2019, and the Boston Red Sox are more on a downward look and a viewpoint going into the 2019 season. What we also have to look at is, how did a team win, and can that winning be sustainable, and is it something that's repeatable? So let's look at the Tampa Rays, for example. The Rays won a lot of games. They won 90 games, and based on what happened versus what should have happened, they should have won 94 games. So they were a team that actually should have won more. However, in this season, we are looking at them to be a much lower projection, and the reason for that is because of how they won a year ago. They won games a year ago with 2 starting pitchers, and they did that opener stuff for 3 starts. This year they're going to have at least 3 starting pitchers and only 2 opening start days with the openers out of the bullpen. But teams are going to be way more ready for that this season. And not only that, that's never been proven as a technique or a model that is repeatable as a way to win baseball games. They are not a big scoring team. They are not a big home run team, and they got rid of their best home run hitter in Cron. So they're going to struggle to produce the same results as they did a year ago. Another team that is going to be like that is going to be the Oakland A's. The Oakland A's won because of their offense, and they got great production out of the younger players. And Chris Davis hit over 40 home runs again. So their projection is going to be much lower, and it's not necessarily because their offense is going to fall apart, but their pitching that they relied on down the stretch last year is not sustainable based on who pitches for the Oakland A's. So we're going to look at the Oakland A's as a team that's going to be, more borderline 500, and we'll look at the Tampa Rays to be more borderline 500 going into this season. So that produces two teams that are going to fight for that playoff spot in the same regard. And the interesting thing is going to be a couple of teams might move into there. The Minnesota Twins have made a ton of positive moves. Their offense is going to grow exponentially. They're going to be one of the better teams compared to a year ago. They won 78 games last year. They should have only won 75. That being said, they're still way behind Cleveland in total wins. If Cleveland won 91 last year, should have won 95. That's 20 games they got to make up there. Now, I will say this. They've made up a lot of ground, and Cleveland has lost the ground. They have lost Edwin Encarnacion, so they only have two guys that are proven hitters on their team right now, in Lindor and Ramirez. Both of those guys are MVP-type players, but they've lost Encarnacion. They picked up Santana to replace him, and he's not that guy. I mean, Encarnacion's a 100 RBI guy, and you can't replace 100 RBI guys unless you have another one. And I'm very concerned about the Cleveland Indian offense. They're going to have to try to win games similar to the way the Houston Astros did a year ago, except for the offense won't be as good as what Houston provided. So I think the Indians are going to be lower than the projections that they're showing for them. My target range for them is 86 to 89. I think they're going to win somewhere around 87 games. I think the Minnesota Twins have improved dramatically from the 75, but I think they're going to only get to about 82 wins. So that puts them right at the 500 number, but it cuts that 20 games difference to 5. So 5 can be an effect of an off-season pickup, a mid-season pickup. It can be a superstar that comes out of nowhere. I mean, what if the Twins get some pitching, and then all of a sudden they can compete with the Indians because the offense for the Minnesota Twins is very good, and the offense for the Cleveland Indians is just not. The other one is the Los Angeles Angels. The Angels have made some moves that make sense. Not that they picked up these dynamite players. I mean, they've got now Matt Harvey and pitchers like that came over, but that was their issue. They needed to have guys that can throw innings, and now they have some of those guys. Trevor Cahill's there, so I think the Angels and their offense was just fine. So as long as that sustains and they play well, they'll be up from where they were last year, and that should put them in a position where, in my opinion, they pass the Oakland A's. So I'm looking at a breakdown that kind of looks like this. I think that the New York Yankees and the Houston Astros are the cream of the crop in the American League. I have the Astros targeted for 102 wins. I have the Yankees at 101 wins. I have the Boston Red Sox at 97 wins. So that's the three super teams. I still think all three are super teams. And then I have the Cleveland Indians at 87 wins, and 87 wins winning the Central, but not by very much. And that could obviously change. And then when it comes to the wild card for the fourth wild card, I've got the Tampa Rays at 85, Minnesota 82, and the Angels 85, and the Oakland A's 83. So I think that that's what you're running into when it comes to the American League, is that you're going to see teams that are super teams. You're going to disqualify, the Orioles, the Royals, the White Sox, the Tigers, and the Rangers. You're also going to disqualify the Mariners. So there's a lot of teams already out, and then the rest of them are fighting for that one spot. So anyway, I think that's kind of how it breaks down as a quick overview. Talk to you later.